At the center of the market square, Master Torben stood beside a wooden auction platform that had seen better days. The timber was stained dark from years of use, livestock, grain, and on rarer, uglier occasions, human cargo. Today, it held a man. "What are they selling, Gina?" asked old Marta from the bakery stall, squinting toward the commotion. "Hush," Gina murmured, not to silence her but because she couldn't form words. Her throat had gone tight. Before we get into the story, take a second to subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to know if this story reaches Canada, the United States, Australia, Africa, or the United Kingdom. Let me know where you're listening from. Now, let's begin. The square thrummed with a dangerous energy that set her teeth on edge. Voices rose and fell in waves, jeers, laughter, and something darker beneath it all. Even from her position near the grain merchant's cart, Gina could see the prisoner was massive. Towering. He knelt on the platform, but even on his knees, he dwarfed Master Torben completely, broad across the shoulders and chest despite the brutal evidence of captivity. Heavy iron chains wrapped around his torso, crisscrossing his bare skin. Manacles bit into his wrists, the metal streaked with rust and dried blood. His clothes, what remained of them, hung in shreds that revealed more scars than skin. Long blonde hair, matted and dark with grime, fell forward over his face. "Behold!" Torben's voice boomed across the square. "A wolf demon from the cursed northern territories. Captured raiding our livestock, killing good men who tried to stop him." He paused, letting the crowd's anger swell. "The crown has decreed his execution at sundown, unless someone here has coin enough to purchase his labor. 3 silver coins to cover blood debt. Who among you is brave enough or foolish enough to bid?" A ripple moved through the crowd. Fear, fascination, and bloodlust all tangled together. Gina found herself pushing forward, slipping between bodies, drawn by something she couldn't name. Something that felt like recognition, though she'd never seen this man before in her life. "No one," Torben called out, a cruel smile playing at his lips. "Then we'll have ourselves an execution after all. The pyre's already built." The man on the platform had not moved or spoken through any of it, but as Gina broke through to the front of the crowd, she saw his head lift slightly. Through the curtain of bloodied hair, his eyes found hers. They were the color of a winter sky, pale, crystalline blue. And in their depths, something flickered. Not quite human. Not quite animal. Dying. Gina's hand went to the pocket of her worn skirt. 3 copper coins and 1 silver piece. All she had left after paying the landlord. Not enough for bread. Not enough for firewood. Not enough for anything that mattered. Her fingers closed around the coins. "I'll bid," she heard herself say. The walk to her cottage should have taken 10 minutes. With Erwin's weight bearing down on her shoulders, it took nearly an hour. Gina had convinced Master Torben to let her use his cart for the first quarter mile, but after that, she was on her own. The crowd had dispersed quickly once the spectacle ended, their disappointment at being denied an execution palpable. No one offered to help. No one even looked her direction as she half-dragged, half-carried the chained man through the narrow streets toward the town's edge. Erwin was conscious enough to stumble forward when she pulled, but his legs gave out every few steps. Each time he collapsed, Gina had to brace herself against his impossible weight, her boots scraping against the cobblestones as she fought to keep them both upright. "Almost there," she muttered, though she didn't know if he could hear her. "Just a bit further." Her cottage sat apart from the other buildings, a small stone structure with a thatched roof that leaked when it rained. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She'd worked 3 years in the textile mill to afford it. By the time she shouldered open the door, her arms were shaking and sweat plastered her hair to her neck despite the autumn chill. Erwin collapsed the moment they crossed the threshold, his body hitting the wooden floor with a sound that made Gina wince. "Sorry," she gasped, though he didn't respond. She dragged him toward the hearth where the light was better, then set about building a fire. Her hands trembled as she worked the flint. When the kindling finally caught, she turned back to examine what she'd purchased. In the firelight, he looked even worse than he had on the platform. Dried blood crusted across his face and torso. Fresh wounds still seeped beneath the grime. But it was the black veins spreading beneath his skin that made her breath catch. They weren't like bruises. They moved. Gina leaned closer, her healer's instinct overriding her fear. The veins pulsed with a faint, sickly luminescence, branching out from a wound near his heart. The corruption spread like roots through his chest, up his neck, down his arms. As she watched, one of the tendrils crept another inch toward his shoulder. "What did they do to you?" she whispered. She fetched water from the bucket by the door and began cleaning the wounds she could reach, working carefully around the chains. His skin burned with fever. When she pressed a cool cloth to his forehead, his eyes snapped open. Gold. They were pure molten gold. Gina jerked back, her heart hammering. "Run." His voice came out as a rasp, barely human. The words scraped against his throat like broken glass. "While you still can." "I'm not going anywhere," Gina said, forcing steadiness into her voice. "I paid good coin for you. You're not dying on my floor." Something that might have been a laugh rattled in his chest. The sound dissolved into a cough that shook his entire body. When the fit passed, his eyes had returned to that crystalline blue. "Foolish girl," he breathed. "You've bought yourself a corpse." Then his eyes rolled back, and he was gone again, leaving Gina alone with the dancing firelight and the black veins that continued their slow, relentless crawl beneath his skin. The fever came on like wildfire just after midnight. Gina had dozed off in the chair beside the hearth, her neck crooked at an uncomfortable angle. She woke to the sound of chains rattling against the floorboards and Erwin's voice, low and guttural, speaking words in a language she didn't recognize. "Easy," she said, scrambling to her feet. "You're safe. You need to stay still." His back arched off the floor, every muscle in his body going rigid. The black veins had spread further, now reaching past his collarbone and down toward his wrists. They pulsed in rhythm with his racing heartbeat, the sickly luminescence brighter than before. Gina pressed her hand to his forehead and immediately pulled back. His skin was scorching, hot enough to hurt. She grabbed the water bucket, soaking a cloth and draping it across his chest. Steam rose where the fabric touched his skin. His eyes were moving rapidly beneath closed lids, his breathing sharp and erratic. "Come on," Gina whispered. "Stay with me." Erwin's eyes snapped open. Gold. Pure, burning gold with no trace of humanity left in them. His lips pulled back from his teeth, and Gina's breath caught. His canines had elongated, sharp and white and gleaming in the firelight. "Erwin." Her voice came out thin. He didn't seem to see her. His gaze was unfocused, wild, tracking something that wasn't there. A growl built in his chest, low and resonant, vibrating through the floorboards. "It's all right," Gina said, keeping her voice soft and steady the way she would with a spooked horse. "You're burning up. Let me help you." She reached toward him with the cloth. He moved faster than anything human had a right to move. One moment he was on his back, the next he was on her. The chain snapped taut but didn't break as he lunged forward, catching her around the waist with one manacled hand. Gina's scream caught in her throat as he yanked her down, pulling her against his burning chest. "No, wait." His other hand fisted in her hair, wrenching her head to the side. She felt his breath hot against her neck, heard the rumble in his chest shift to something darker, more primal. Then his teeth sank into the curve where her neck met her shoulder. The pain was instant and blinding. Gina's vision widened out. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but feel the pressure of his jaw locked around her flesh, the sharp points of those inhuman teeth piercing deep into muscle. She tried to push him away, but it was like trying to move a mountain. His arms had become an iron cage around her, holding her immobile as he bit down harder. Just when she thought she might pass out from the pain, his grip went slack. Erwin collapsed backward, his head hitting the floor with a dull thud. His eyes rolled back to white and his breathing evened out, suddenly peaceful. Gina stumbled away from him, her hand flying to her neck. Her fingers came away slick with blood. She could feel it running down her collarbone, soaking into her dress. The wounds throbbed in time with her heartbeat, a deep, burning ache that radiated outward from the bite. In the firelight, she could see the perfect impression of teeth marks branded into her skin. Dawn light filtered through the cottage window, pale and gray. Gina sat at her small table, needle and thread in trembling hands, trying to stitch the worst of the bite wounds. The smaller punctures she'd cleaned and bandaged, but the two deepest marks needed closing. She'd done this before, stitched wounds on mill workers who'd caught their hands in machinery, on farmers gored by bulls. She knew how to keep her hands steady, how to make the knots tight and clean. But those had been other people's flesh, not her own. The needle pierced her skin, and she bit down on the leather strap clenched between her teeth to keep from crying out. Behind her, Erwin remained unconscious by the fire, his breathing finally steady. She was halfway through the second wound when she heard him stir. "What have I done?" The words came out hoarse but lucid. Fully conscious for the first time, Gina turned to find him sitting up, chains pooling in his lap, staring at her neck with an expression of pure horror. His eyes were blue again, devastatingly human. "You had a fever," Gina said, setting down the needle. "You weren't yourself." "That's no excuse." He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't hold him. He collapsed back against the stone hearth, jaw clenched. "You should have let me die on that platform." "Well, I didn't." Gina crossed to the water bucket, dampening a fresh cloth. "And you're not dying in my cottage either, so we're just going to have to make the best of it." "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." She knelt beside him, pressing the cloth to his forehead. The fever had broken, but his skin still felt too warm. "Starting with what you are." A bitter laugh escaped him. "What I am. A dead man walking." He met her eyes. "My name is Erwin Ruff. I'm the Crown Prince of the Northern Lycan Territories. Or I was, before Inquisitor General Crane's men took me during what was supposed to be a peace negotiation." Lycan. The word hung in the air between them. Gina had heard the stories, tales of wolf demons in the north who could shift between human and beast. She'd always thought them nothing more than superstition, propaganda to justify the crown's expansion into disputed territories. "The black veins," she said quietly. "What is that?" "Sanctified silver." Erwin's voice turned hollow. "Alchemically altered to burn us from the inside out. Crane's weapon of choice. It's designed to be slow, agonizing. A message to my people about what happens when we try to negotiate instead of submit." Gina looked at the spreading corruption across his chest. "Can it be stopped?" "No." He turned his face away. "But that's not what should concern you." Something in his tone made her stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "The bite." He forced himself to look at her again, and the guilt in his eyes was devastating. "I've marked you. Claimed you as my mate. It's an ancient bond, written into our very blood. Once initiated, it cannot be undone." "I don't understand." "Your body will begin changing," Erwin said, each word seemingly torn from him. "Human bodies can't sustain a Lycan bond. You'll either complete the transformation and become one of us, or—" He stopped, his throat working. "Or what?" "Or the incomplete bond will tear you apart from the inside." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I've killed you, Gina Morin. I've killed the woman who saved my life." The changes started small. 3 days after the bite, Gina woke to the sound of old Thomas arguing with his wife 4 houses down. She could hear every word clearly, as if they were standing in her cottage instead of 100 yards away. She pressed her hands over her ears, but it didn't help. The voices burrowed into her skull alongside a dozen other sounds, a dog barking at the market, children playing near the well, the rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer. "Make it stop," she whispered. Erwin looked up from where he sat by the window. The chains were gone. Gina had spent an hour with a file, working the locks until they gave way. He was still weak from the poison, but strong enough to move around the cottage now. "It won't stop," he said quietly. "Your senses are waking up. Learning to filter it takes time." "How much time?" He didn't answer. By the fourth day, the smells became unbearable. She could identify every herb hanging from her rafters, every ingredient in the stew she'd made 3 days ago, every unwashed body that had walked past her door that morning. The world had become an assault of scents, each one sharp and distinct and overwhelming. But it was the pain that frightened her most. It started as an ache deep in her bones, concentrated in her spine and ribcage. At first, she thought she'd pulled something dragging Erwin home. But the ache didn't fade. It grew worse, spreading to her shoulders, her hips, her jaw. It felt like something was trying to reshape her skeleton from the inside, testing the limits of what her human frame could hold. On the 5th day, Dr. Patrice came calling. Gina heard his cart approaching from a mile away, recognized the particular creak of its wheels and the labored breathing of his old mare. By the time he knocked, she was already on edge, every nerve ending screaming. "Miss Morin," Patrice said when she opened the door. He was a portly man with kind eyes and perpetual smell of tobacco. Today, that smell made Gina's stomach turn. "Word around town is you bought yourself a northerner at auction. Thought I'd check to make sure you haven't caught anything unsavory." "I'm fine," Gina said, blocking the doorway. Patrice peered past her, catching sight of Erwin by the hearth. "That's him then? Nasty business, keeping one of them under your roof. You know what they say about the wolf demons." A growl rose in Gina's throat. She felt it building in her chest, felt it rumble up through her vocal cords, low and threatening and absolutely inhuman. Patrice's eyes went wide. He took a step back, one hand reaching for the knife at his belt. Gina clamped her mouth shut, horrified. Her hands were shaking. "I think you should leave," she managed. Patrice didn't argue. He hurried back to his cart, glancing over his shoulder twice before snapping the reins and disappearing down the road. When Gina turned around, Erwin was standing, his expression grave. "It's happening faster than it should," he said. "The bond is accelerating. You have days, Gina. Maybe a week before your body can't sustain the partial transformation anymore." He moved closer, and she could see the war in his eyes, guilt and something else, something fiercer. "We need to get you to my people. They're the only ones who might be able to help you survive this." They came on the 7th day. Gina was drawing water from the well when she heard the horses. Not the usual farm horses or merchant ponies, but war horses. She could tell from the heavy cadence of their hooves, the jangle of military tack. Her new senses painted a picture before she ever turned around. 20 riders, maybe more, wearing steel and leather that creaked with every movement. At their head rode a man whose scent made every instinct in Gina's body scream danger. He dismounted with practiced ease, his black cloak settling around shoulders that were broader than they'd first appeared. His face was handsome in a severe way, sharp cheekbones, a neat beard touched with gray, eyes the color of slate. He smiled at her, and it was the smile of a man who'd already won. "Miss Morin, I presume?" Gina's hand tightened on the well rope. "Who's asking?" "Inquisitor General Matthias Crane." He inclined his head in a mockery of courtesy. "I've come a long way to have a conversation with you." The name sent ice down her spine. Every person in the kingdom knew of Crane, the king's right hand, the man who led the purges against the northern territories. They said he'd burned entire villages, that he collected Lycan pelts like trophies. "I have nothing to say to you." "Oh, I think you do." Crane moved closer, his boots clicking against the cobblestones. "You see, a fascinating rumor reached me. A young woman in a backwater town purchased a prisoner at auction for a handful of coins. A prisoner who, by all accounts, should have died days ago from sanctified silver poisoning." His smile widened. "Yet here you are, drawing water as if nothing unusual has happened. Tell me, Miss Morin, how is your investment?" Gina's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Crane stopped 3 feet away, close enough that Gina could smell the silver dust on his clothes, see the network of thin scars on his hands. Let me be direct. You're harboring Erwin Ruff, Crown Prince of the Northern Lycan territories and enemy of the realm. That makes you guilty of treason. He's just a man. He's a wolf demon. Crane's voice went cold. And unless I'm very much mistaken, he's also bitten you. His gaze dropped to her neck, where the bandage still covered the claiming mark. Yes, I can see it. The signs are already showing, aren't they? The heightened senses, the bone ache, the barely controlled aggression. Gina took a step back. I'm going to make you an offer, Crane continued. One chance to save yourself from what's coming. Tell me where Ruff is. Let my men take him quietly. In exchange, I'll provide you with an antidote to halt the corruption in your blood. He paused. You'll hang for treason, of course, but at least you'll die human. And if I refuse? Then you'll die alongside him. Slowly. Painfully. Crane's expression didn't change. I'll burn your cottage with both of you inside it and scatter the ashes. The bond will tear you apart while you watch him burn. Is that really how you want this to end? Gina met his eyes. Her hands had stopped shaking. Go to hell. Crane's smile vanished. He turned to his men and said, just 2 words, take her. The purge guard dragged Gina back toward her cottage with efficiency born of practice. She fought, but human strength was nothing against trained soldiers in steel armor. Crane followed at a leisurely pace, already issuing orders for a perimeter around the property. Ruff won't run, he told his lieutenant. He's too weak from the poison, and he won't leave the girl. We'll flush him out and end this. They were 50 yards from her door when the first wolf appeared. It materialized from the tree line like smoke-given form, massive, gray as winter's storm clouds, with eyes that gleamed silver in the fading light. Then another emerged. And another. Within heartbeats, a dozen wolves surrounded the clearing, each one larger than any natural animal had a right to be. The guards froze. Formation. Crane's voice cracked like a whip. Silver weapons now. But the wolves were already moving. They came in fast and low, targeting the men holding Gina first. She felt hands release her as soldiers scrambled for weapons. Steel rang against steel. Men shouted. A wolf's howl split the air, and then the world dissolved into chaos. Gina ran for her cottage. She had to get to Erwin, had to warn him. Pain exploded through her body. It started in her hands, a sensation like her bones were breaking and reforming simultaneously. She looked down and watched in horror as her fingers elongated, the joints cracking and popping. Her nails darkened, sharpened, extending into curved claws. Silver blonde fur erupted along her forearms, spreading up toward her elbows and patches. She tried to scream, but the sound that came out was something between human and animal. Her spine arched. She felt her ribcage expanding, felt something trying to force its way out through her skin. The pain was beyond anything she'd ever imagined, white-hot and all-consuming, as if her entire body was being torn apart and reassembled wrong. Gina. Through the haze of agony, she saw Erwin burst from the cottage. He was still too thin, still marked with black veins, but he moved with purpose. Behind him, the largest wolf she'd yet seen, a female with fur the color of dark honey and the same blue eyes as Erwin, took down 2 guards at once. Erwin reached Gina as she collapsed, her partial transformation leaving her convulsing on the ground. Fur and skin fought for dominance along her arms. Her fingers were neither human nor animal, caught in some horrible in-between state. I've got you, Erwin said, scooping her up. She was dimly aware of how easily he lifted her now, the poison weakness burned away by desperation. Astrid, we need to move. The honey-colored wolf, his sister, Gina realized through the pain, let out a sharp bark. The pack began to retreat, flowing back toward the forest in coordinated waves. Burn it. Crane's voice rang out behind them. Burn everything. They can't have gone far. Gina turned her head in time to see torches arc through the air. Her cottage, her home, went up in flames within seconds, the dry thatch catching like kindling. Black smoke billowed into the darkening sky. Then they were in the forest, and Erwin was running, and Gina was screaming as her body continued its agonizing, incomplete transformation. Gina woke to silver moonlight filtering through ancient trees. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was or how she'd gotten there. Then the pain reminded her a dull, persistent ache in every bone, every joint. She looked down at her hands and relief flooded through her. They were human again. The fur had receded, the claws retracted. But the memory of that wrongness remained, lurking just beneath her skin. "You're awake." A woman sat on a fallen log nearby, her honey-colored hair braided back from a face that shared Erwin's sharp features and startling blue eyes. She wore leather hunting clothes and moved with the casual grace of someone completely comfortable in the wilderness. "Astrid," Gina said, the name coming to her though they'd never been properly introduced. "Good. You remember." Astrid stood, approaching with cautious steps as if Gina might bolt. "You've been unconscious for 2 days. Erwin's been." She paused. "Difficult." Gina sat up slowly, taking in her surroundings. She lay on a bed of furs inside what appeared to be a massive hollow tree, its trunk easily 20 feet across. Beyond the entrance, she could see a grove of similar giants, their canopies so dense they blocked out most of the sky. Stone markers carved with spiraling symbols dotted the clearing, and the air itself felt different here, charged, ancient, alive. "Where are we?" "The Heart Grove, the oldest sanctuary in the Northern Territories." Astrid sat beside her. "It's protected by magic older than the kingdom itself. Crane's men can't track us here even if they wanted to. Erwin is fine. Stubborn and guilt-ridden, but fine." Astrid's expression softened slightly. "He told me what happened. About the claiming bite." Gina touched her neck where the marks were still tender. "He said it would kill me. It will, if you don't complete the transformation." Astrid's bluntness was almost refreshing after days of uncertainty. "The claiming bond ties your soul to his. It's meant to forge an unbreakable connection between mates. But human bodies weren't designed to hold that kind of magic. You felt it starting during the attack, the partial shift. That's your body trying to accommodate what the bond demands." "How long do I have?" "Days. Maybe less." Astrid met her eyes. "The bond is progressing faster than it should. Probably because Erwin's own life is still hanging by a thread. The sanctified silver is killing him slowly, and the bond is trying to anchor him through you. It's creating a feedback loop that's accelerating everything." Voices rose from somewhere deeper in the grove, angry, heated. "What's that?" Astrid's joy tightened. "The pack. They're divided about you. Some see you as a human who saved their prince and deserves their protection. Others see you as a liability, a weakness that could get us all killed. And a few," she hesitated, "a few believe you're meant to be our Luna. That the bond chose you for a reason. Luna, the alpha's mate. The female who leads alongside him." Astrid stood. "If you complete the transformation, if you survive the claiming, you won't just be Lycan. You'll be bound to Erwin as his equal, his partner. The pack would follow you as they follow him. And if I don't survive? Then Erwin will likely follow you into death. The sanctified silver will finish what it started, and the Northern Territories will lose their last remaining royal bloodline." Astrid's voice was steady, but Gina could hear the fear beneath it. No pressure. The pain came in waves now, each one stronger than the last. Gina tried to hide it at first, gritting her teeth through the bone-deep aches, excusing herself when the convulsions started. But by the 3rd day in the Heart Grove, there was no hiding anything. Her body was at war with itself, human and wolf tearing at each other with increasing violence. She woke before dawn on the 4th day to find Erwin sitting beside her, his hand wrapped around hers. The black veins had spread further up his neck, but his eyes were clear and devastatingly sad. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For all of this." You deserved better than to be dragged into our war. Stop apologizing, Gina managed through clenched teeth. Another spasm rippled through her spine, and she couldn't suppress the whimper that escaped. Just help me get through this. But Erwin was already pulling away, his expression shuddering. Get some rest. Astrid will bring you something for the pain. He was gone before she could respond. Hours later, when the sun had fully risen and Gina had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep, Astrid burst into the hollow tree. He's gone. Her voice was raw with panic and rage. That fool, that absolute fool. Gina struggled upright, despite the protest of every muscle. What are you talking about? Erwin. He left in the night. Astrid thrust a piece of bark into Gina's hands. Words had been carved into it with a knife, the letters crude but legible. I won't let her die for my mistake. Tell Gina I'm sorry. Tell her to live. No. The word came out broken. Gina tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. Where did he go? The capital. To Crane. Astrid's hands were shaking. He thinks if he dies, the bond will break and you'll return to being human. He thinks he's saving you. But that's not. Gina's breath hitched as another wave of pain rolled through her. That's not how it works, is it? Astrid's silence was answer enough. The bond is already too strong, the Lycan woman finally said. If Erwin dies now, especially by execution, the severing will kill you too. Or worse, trap you in a partial state, caught between forms until your body gives out. She knelt beside Gina. He's so consumed by guilt he can't see reason. He thinks he's being noble, sacrificing himself to undo what he's done. But all he's doing is ensuring you both die. Gina looked down at her hands. They were trembling, the fingers just slightly too long, the joints not quite human. The transformation was progressing whether she wanted it to or not. How long until he reaches the capital? 2 days if he pushes hard. Crane will want to make a spectacle of it, a public execution to prove the Lycans can be defeated. Astrid's voice hardened. He'll wait until he has an audience. That gives us maybe 4 days total. Then we have to stop him. You can barely stand. Then help me. Gina forced herself to her feet, swaying but upright. Pain lanced through her spine, but she pushed through it. You said some of the pack believes I'm meant to be Luna. That the bond chose me for a reason. Yes. Then let's find out if they're right. Gina met Astrid's eyes. Tell me how to complete the transformation. The Heartstone stood at the center of the grove, a pillar of white granite veined with silver that seemed to glow in the moonlight. Ancient runes spiraled up its surface, and the ground around it was worn smooth by centuries of ritual. The transformation isn't just physical, Astrid explained as she led Gina to the stone. It's a surrender. You have to stop fighting what's inside you and let it become part of who you are. Gina pressed her palm against the cold granite. Immediately, she felt something respond, a pulse of energy that resonated with the ache in her bones, the wrongness that had been building beneath her skin. What do I do? Let go. Astrid stepped back. Stop trying to stay human. Accept the wolf. Gina closed her eyes and dropped every wall she'd built against the pain, every resistance she'd clung to. The change hit her like a tidal wave. Her spine curved backward with a crack that echoed through the grove. She fell to her knees as her legs reshaped, bones breaking and reforming. Her scream became a howl halfway through as her jaw extended, teeth sharpening. Fur erupted across her entire body in a wave of gold, not silver blonde like before, but pure, radiant gold. The pain was absolute, all-consuming. Every cell in her body was being unmade and remade. But this time, instead of fighting it, Gina surrendered to it. She let herself break. Let herself become something new. When it ended, she stood on 4 legs, her breath misting in the cold air. Astrid stared at her, eyes wide. Golden, she whispered. You're golden. Do you know what that means? But Gina was already running. The wolf's body moved with an ease and power that should have been impossible. She crossed miles in minutes, Astrid and 3 others from the pack racing alongside her. The capital city appeared on the horizon just as the sun began to set on the fourth day. The execution platform stood in the main square, surrounded by hundreds of spectators. Erwin knelt at its center, chains wrapped around his torso, his head bowed. The black veins had consumed most of his visible skin now. He was dying, and he knew it. Crane stood beside him, a sanctified silver blade in his hand, making a speech about the defeat of monsters. Gina didn't hear the words. She only saw Erwin. She burst through the crowd like a golden arrow, leaping onto the platform before the guards could react. She placed herself between Erwin and Crane's blade, lips pulled back from her fangs. Erwin's head snapped up. Gina, no. She threw her head back and howled. The sound shook the square, resonated in every chest, rattled windows. As the howl built, light began to pour from her fur, golden, brilliant, blinding. It spread to Erwin, wrapping around him like a living thing. The claiming bond, incomplete for so long, suddenly snapped into place with the force of a thunderclap. Erwin's chains shattered. The black veins across his skin began to recede, pushed back by the golden light. His own transformation took him, wolf replacing man in seconds, massive and silver gray with eyes of crystal blue. Two wolves stood on the platform, one gold and one silver, facing down Crane and his army. The Inquisitor General raised his blade, but before he could strike, both wolves moved as one. They leaped from the platform and disappeared into the crowd, then into the streets, then into the forest beyond. Behind them, chaos erupted. The crowd murmured in confusion and awe. Crane's men gave chase, but found nothing but empty trees. And in the Heart Grove, when Gina and Erwin finally shifted back to human form, they collapsed into each other's arms, the bond thrumming between them like a second heartbeat, complete, unbreakable, and impossibly alive. Before you go, drop a comment and tell me, what moment hit you hardest? When Gina spent her last coins to save a chained stranger? When Erwin's bite bound their souls in a fevered night? Or when she transformed into a golden wolf to save him from execution? Could you have surrendered to the transformation, letting your body break and remake itself? Would you choose to become Luna beside a Lycan Prince over the human life you knew? If this story of fated bonds and dangerous transformations resonated with you, hit subscribe for more tales of impossible love. Until then, may you find the courage to embrace what you're becoming, even when it terrifies you.